Hey witches, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share the magic and folklore of Lammas, which of course is also known as Lughnasadh, which is the Celtic holiday that kicks off the harvest season, and it's also one of the Sabbats of the modern wheel of the year. I'm going to be sharing folk practices and 9 simple spells that you can do to work with this magic. I hope you enjoy. If you're an experienced witch and you know general information about Lammas, I've time-stamped today's video so you can jump straight into the magic and spell ideas. Lughnasadh was a pre-Christian Celtic name for the fire festival, one of the 4 great fire festivals in Celtic culture. It's associated with the god Lugh, a many-skilled deity that the Romans linked to Mercury. Lugh started this festival in honor of his foster mother Ritul, who cleared the land and brought agriculture to people and taught them how to farm. As the Celtic lands became Christianized, Lughnasadh became known as Lammas or Loafmas in Anglo-Saxon areas, a time of first fruit celebrations and offerings to the gods. Let's move into the magic together. Large gatherings often took place at this time of year, and temporary marriages, condemned by the church of course, also known as hand fastings, were very common. If couples chose, they often would make the union permanent the following year. If you are considering a hand fasting, a marriage, or some type of sacred union, this is a great time of year to do it. You could start by creating a small altar with flowers, fruits, and grains of the season and invite guests to bring something to add. You can also invite people to speak about your union, give you well wishings, and place what they brought on the altar. That can be a very simple part of the ceremony. So in Scotland, a costume figure known as the Bury-man traditionally parades through town. He wears a headdress of wild roses, he carries 2 staffs covered with wildflowers, and his muslin clothes are covered and decorated with sticky burrs. Seeing him and giving him money bring good luck, good fortune, blessings, fertility, prosperity. And to me, he echoes the green god, the wild god, the oak king. And so the way I like to work with this energy at this time of year is to create an image of him from leaves, sticks, antlers, rocks, whatever I have on hand. You can also find clay plaques pretty commonly of a leafed god and use that. Then light a candle and place an offering. This can be money, as is traditional, but it also can be a prayer, an offering, your love, grain, wine, whatever feels right to you. I feel like it's a way of calling in the blessings of the wild into my garden and crops. So after the Christianization of Lughnasadh into Lammas, people just shifted their pagan practices to include the church in some way. So this could look like them bringing the bread made from the first cut of grain or the first grain they harvested itself into the church to ask for a blessing. And of course, on this day, there was usually an official mass, but in many places the priest would actually go out to the fields and give some kind of vaguely Christian overlay to the traditional folk and pagan practices that people were doing. The way I bring this into my home is personally I bake a loaf of bread, or more often I'll just go and buy one from a local bakery. I charge it with gratitude, tear it into small pieces, and then scatter those throughout my yard, and then water it in, offering blessings for the land and gratitude to the earth. This is one of the times of year that's really good for abundance and prosperity magic. In a bowl, you can combine grains with abundance herbs like cinnamon, basil, and oak leaves. And since it's just the start of the harvest season, folk magic often included things that were protective in their practices and their folk traditions. That's why I like including basil and oak in the herbs that I use, because they contain both that abundance magic and some protective qualities. And you can stir them with your hands or a spoon, Focus on abundance, maybe adding in some protective thoughts, and you can say something like, may my harvest and abundance be steady and grow. And then light a small candle to activate the spell. Once the candle has burned out, use the grains to create a spiral on the earth to call in abundance. If you like, you could probably start at the outside edge and spiral in. Some people feel like that might be better for calling things in. And if you're in a wild area, I would use oat flakes or non-sprouting seeds so you don't get invasives growing. You can also make what's called a corn dolly. This is a European tradition, and I want to add that if you live in the United States, the word corn usually means corn, like corn on the cob, or maize, which is indigenous to this continent. But in European cultures, the word corn usually means the grain of the region rather than corn on the cob or maize. And to make a corn dolly, you can find grain stalks at craft stores, usually at this time of year, and tie them into a simple human-like form. I often have just used grasses. People make really beautiful ones. Mine are usually just kind of not so beautiful, but these figures do provide blessings, protection, fertility, and can be kept on your altar or near your hearth. Another simple practice you can do to celebrate this season is to invite friends, witchy or non-witchy, if they're open, to bring fresh produce from their gardens or from the farmer's market. Then you can cook a shared meal together. And before eating, just place spoonfuls of the food in a bowl or a plate. Add a glass of red wine that everyone holds and blesses, and place that somewhere outside as an offering. Then thank the land, the earth, the gods, in whatever form you know them. Lughnasadh was also the time of year when people would climb hills and bury flowers to mark the ending of the high summer season. So to start that, gather some flowers that remind you of the summer season, tie them in a bundle, and as you're tying that final knot, you could make a commitment of some kind to a regular practice. That could be daily offerings, launching into a course of study, blessing the earth, buying some books, dedicating yourself temporarily to working with a particular spiritual being, or whatever feels right to you. It could also be as simple as greeting the day and saying blessings as the sun sets at night. Blackberries are strongly associated with the Fae and also with this time of year. So one of my favorite magical craft practices to do is to soak blackberries or maybe apples in vodka or brandy for a few weeks. After straining it out, I add a little sugar and cinnamon, maybe some cloves, just a small pinch, and you can use this potion as an offering throughout the season, especially when you're calling in abundance, protection, or wanting to do some offerings or communication with the Fae. Fire is a really important part of this particular Sabbath, and I try to include it however I can. One way you could do this is to make a small fire and invite other witches to join you and speak going around the circle as they choose. They can just share a story, check in, sing a song, or share something that they want to celebrate. I did this for years as my basic witchcraft practice, and I learned so much about energy and pacing and myself from doing this practice. Whenever a person is done speaking, they can pour out an offering of wine or whiskey on the edge of the fire. Or if you'd prefer to not have alcohol, you could also have several dry sticks, maybe a pretty good bundle if you've got several people, that they could put in the fire as an offering. If you want, you could also investigate the magical associations of the twigs that are available to you and maybe tie those into the celebration and which sticks that people would choose to toss in the fire depending on what they're sharing. We're not done yet. No, we're not. We got ways to go. Let me know in the comments any folk magic spells, traditions you like to do at this time of year. And if you've enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate you liking and subscribing to my channel, commenting. Maybe check out my description and visit me on Patreon for more in-depth, deep content on my witchcraft practice. And I also have a blog and a newsletter. All those links in the description. So until next time, stay safe and be well.